Rain tapped softly against the window as a distant siren faded into the night. A suitcase zipper broke the silence in the tiny apartment where dreams once lived. My heart pounded louder than the city outside as his shadow moved across the wall. I didn't hear the door at first. What I heard was the sound of drawers opening. Slow, careful, like someone trying not to be noticed at that hour of the night. The apartment should have been silent. The electricity had been cut again, so the only light came from the street lamp outside, stretching long shadows across the wall. I lay on the small bed we had. We had sold some of our belongings. He said it was temporary. I believed him. Then I heard the zipper, the soft scrape of fabric closing. That was when my heart started to race. I sat up, and in the half-darkness, I saw him, my boyfriend of 4 years, the man I had built my life around, folding his clothes into a suitcase, not rushing, not panicking, moving like someone who had already made peace with leaving. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My throat felt locked. "Where are you going?" I finally asked. He froze, just for a moment. Then he slowly turned around. His face wasn't guilty. It wasn't nervous. It was tired. The kind of tired that comes when someone has already decided you are no longer part of their future. "I didn't want to wake you," he said quietly. I stood up, my feet touching the cold floor. "Why are you packing?" He was silent at first. Then he looked past me. Not at me. "I can't do this anymore." My chest tightened. "Do what?" "This life," he said. "This struggling. This counting coins. This hoping things will magically get better." I walked closer. We said we would get through it together. He gave a short breath, not a laugh, not a sigh. "Love doesn't pay rent." Those words landed heavier than a slap. "I've been trying for years," he continued. "Every month, it's the same story. No money, no progress. I'm tired." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "We're just in a hard season," I whispered. "It won't always be like this." He finally looked at me then, and in his eyes, I saw something new. Detachment. There's someone else. The room seemed to tilt. "What?" "She's stable," he said. "Her family is comfortable. She has connections. She doesn't live in survival mode." Each word felt chosen carefully. "She can help me move forward." I struggled to breathe. "So you're leaving me because she has money?" "I'm leaving because I want a future," he replied. I stared at the man I had loved since college, the man who once promised we would rise together. Was I ever enough? I asked. He didn't answer. He zipped the suitcase shut. That sound ended everything. For 3 years, I had carried us. When he lost his job, I worked double shifts. When the bills piled up, I sold my phone and used a borrowed one. When food ran low, I told him I wasn't hungry. I watched him eat while my stomach burned. I told myself love meant sacrifice. I told myself things would change. I believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. I believed in us when the world was falling apart. And now, in the quiet of a dark apartment we could no longer afford, he was choosing someone else. Because she was easier. Because she was comfortable. Because she wasn't broke. "She's picking me up downstairs," he said, already dressed, already ready. I followed him to the door in silence. My hands were shaking. "You're really doing this?" I said. He nodded. "I can't stay stuck." I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind him of every night I cried quietly so he wouldn't feel like a burden. Every meal I skipped, every dream I postponed. But I realized something in that moment. He had already rewritten our story in his mind. In his version, I was the weight holding him down, not the woman who held him up. He opened the door. Warm air rushed in from outside. Before stepping out, he paused. I hope you understand someday. I didn't answer, because understanding felt like betrayal to myself. The door closed. His footsteps faded. And just like that, 4 years of love ended in less than 5 minutes. I stood alone, in the dark. No money, no job security, no partner, just silence and questions. I didn't know how I would survive. I didn't know where I would sleep next month. I didn't know how I would rebuild my life. But I also didn't know something else. I didn't know that the man who had just walked out would one day sit across from me in a boardroom, waiting for my decision, waiting for mercy, waiting for the future of his life to rest in my hands. Because that night, the night he left me for someone richer, wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the moment when everything changed. 3 days after he left, I finally stepped outside. Not because I was strong, because the landlord had taped a notice on the door. Rent overdue. Again, I walked through the city with no direction, my phone borrowed, my wallet almost empty, my heart still heavy from everything that had happened. Every place reminded me of him. The bus stop where we used to wait together. The cafe, we once shared 1 cup of coffee because we couldn't afford 2. The small park where he promised me one day we would live better. I wasn't looking for him, but the city placed him in front of me anyway. It happened outside a luxury restaurant downtown. The kind of place with glass walls, soft music, and people who never checked prices. I stopped only because I was tired, and that was when I saw him, stepping out of a black car I had never seen before, wearing clothes I had never bought for him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Beside him was a woman, tall, elegant, her hair styled perfectly. Her heels alone probably cost more than our rent. She held his arm like she owned him, and he let her. My chest tightened. I stood frozen on the sidewalk while they laughed. He leaned close to her ear. She smiled. Then she kissed his cheek. Right there, in public, the same lips that once promised me forever. People turned to look. Some recognized him. Old friends from school, former co-workers. And then he saw me. For a brief second, his face changed. Not shock, not guilt, something closer to discomfort. But it passed quickly. He straightened and walked toward me, with her, like he had something to prove. This is her, he said casually, turning to the woman. My ex. The word ex sounded sharp, short, final. She looked me up and down slowly. My worn shoes, my faded clothes, my tired eyes. And she smiled, not kindly. So this is who you were with when you had nothing, she said. Her tone was soft, but the message was clear. He didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He just stood there, silent. You look thinner, he said to me. Not concern. Observation. I've been busy, I replied quietly. The woman laughed lightly. Busy being broke, I guess. A few people nearby turned their heads. I felt heat rise to my face. He shifted uncomfortably, but still said nothing. She wrapped her arm tighter around his. You should see our apartment, she continued. Top floor, city view. You'd love it. Or maybe you've never been that high before. Her words landed like stones. I swallowed. Why are you doing this? I asked him softly. He sighed. This is what I mean. He said, drama, emotions, struggle. I'm done with all that. I stared at him, So love is nothing now. He met my eyes and said the words that would echo in my mind for years. Love doesn't pay bills. Silence followed. People were watching, listening, judging. I felt small, replaceable, invisible. She understands ambition, he added, nodding at the woman beside him. She pushes me to think bigger. The woman smiled proudly. I don't date men who are stuck, she said. I invest in potential. The word invest burned, as if he were a business project, not a human being, not a heart. I believed in your potential when nobody else did. I said quietly. He looked away. That was then. And now I need results. A friend from our old neighborhood walked past, paused, looked between us, and smiled awkwardly. Oh, she said slowly. So this is the upgrade. The woman laughed again. I wouldn't call it an upgrade, she said. More like a rescue. My chest tightened, so hard I thought I might faint. I nodded once, not because I accepted it, because I couldn't stand there anymore. I turned and walked away, every step heavy, every breath sharp. Behind me, I heard laughter, not his, hers. I didn't cry until I reached the bus stop. Then the tears came fast, not loud, just steady, like something breaking quietly inside. People passed me. No one stopped, but humiliation wasn't done with me yet. Later that evening, I walked past the same restaurant again. I wasn't planning to. My feet just carried me there. And that was when I heard his voice through the open glass doors. I stopped, not on purpose. It just happened. She was holding me back. He was saying. I recognized the tone, the one he used when he wanted approval. I couldn't grow with her. Always struggling, always surviving. The woman laughed softly. You should have left earlier. I know, he said. I stayed too long out of pity. Pity. The word cut deeper than everything else. She loved too hard, he continued. But love without progress is just poverty with emotions. I closed my eyes. My hands trembled. She made me feel small, he added, like I was stuck in a life I didn't choose. I wanted to walk in. I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind him of every sacrifice. But I didn't, because I realized something. In his story now, I wasn't the woman who saved him. I was the woman he escaped. I stepped back quietly. The city noise swallowed my breathing. My chest hurt. My heart felt empty. But deep inside, beneath the pain, something else was forming. Not anger, not hatred, resolve. That night, as I lay on the cold mattress in the dark apartment, I stared at the ceiling. I replayed every word. Held me back. Pity. Love doesn't pay bills. I invested in potential, and I made myself a promise. Not out loud, not dramatically, just quietly. One that would shape everything that followed. I would never be powerless again. I would never beg for love again. And one day, the same man who was embarrassed by my struggle would sit across from me asking for help, not knowing how the world had turned, not knowing who I had become. Because humiliation has a strange way of building strength, and heartbreak has a way of creating women the world can no longer ignore. The humiliation didn't end that day. It followed me home. It followed me into sleep. It followed me into every quiet moment when the world finally slowed down and my thoughts became louder. That night, the apartment felt smaller than ever. The walls were bare now. We had sold almost everything that once made it feel like a home. The television, the couch, even the mirror. All that remained was the thin mattress on the floor, and a single bulb that flickered when the power returned for a few hours. I lay there listening to distant traffic and wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. For years of love, gone. A future I believed in, gone. And somehow, I was the only one left carrying the weight of it all. The eviction notice came 2 days later, slipped under the door like an insult. Final warning. I sat on the floor, holding the paper in shaking hands. I had tried. I had begged my manager at work for extra shifts. I had called friends who were struggling just like me. Everyone was surviving. No one had space to save someone else. I stared at the numbers on the notice. They might as well have been written in another language. There was no way I could pay it. The landlord didn't knock. He unlocked the door. I was brushing my hair when it opened. He stepped in with 2 men behind him. "Time's up," he said flatly. I felt my chest tighten. "I just need 1 more week." I pleaded. "I'm working on it." He shook his head. "You said that last week." I looked around the empty room. "This is all I have. That's not my problem." One of the men started lifting the mattress. Another reached for the small suitcase that held my clothes. I stood there frozen, watching my life be packed away by strangers. "Please," I whispered. No one listened. Within minutes, everything I owned was in the hallway. The door closed, and the lock clicked. Just like that, I was homeless. I sat on the stairs outside the building for hours. People walked past. Some looked. Most didn't. The sun moved across the sky slowly, like the world wasn't in a hurry the way my heart was. I hugged my suitcase and cried. Not loud, just quietly, the kind of crying that feels endless. That night, I slept at a friend's place. On the floor, she had her own struggles. Children to feed, bills to chase. "I'm sorry," she whispered as she gave me a thin blanket. "I wish I could do more." I nodded, grateful, ashamed, broken. 2 days later, I lost my job. I had arrived early like always. My uniform was freshly washed, my hair pulled back neatly. I wanted to show I was still strong, still dependable. But my manager called me into the small office before my shift started. He didn't offer me a seat. "We're cutting staff," he said. My heart dropped. "I can work more hours." I said quickly, "I can take less pay." He shook his head. "It's already decided." I felt dizzy. "Please," I whispered. "I need this job." He sighed. "I'm sorry." That word again. Sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't pay rent. Sorry didn't stop my life from falling apart. I walked out of the building slowly, my uniform folded in my arms like something from a past life. People rushed past me heading to work, heading to futures. I had nowhere to go. That evening, I sat alone in a small park, my suitcase beside me, watching families laugh, couples hold hands, children chase pigeons. The world continued. Mine had stopped. Nights became the hardest. I would lie awake on borrowed floors, staring into darkness, my chest aching, my thoughts attacking me. Was I not good enough? Was I too poor to be loved? Did loving someone deeply make me weak? Had I wasted my life believing in someone who never planned to stay? I replayed his words again and again. Love doesn't pay bills. She held me back. I stayed out of pity. Each time they returned, something inside me broke a little more. I cried quietly so no one would hear. I cried into pillows, into blankets, into my own hands. Some nights, I cried until there were no tears left, just pain. I began questioning everything about myself, my dreams, my heart, my worth. I wondered if success was the only thing that made someone lovable. I wondered if being poor made me disposable. I wondered if I would always be the woman people left behind when life became hard. One night, after everyone had fallen asleep in my friend's apartment, I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the cold floor, and broke down. My body shook. My chest burned. I covered my mouth to keep from making noise. I tried. I whispered into the darkness. I tried so hard. No one answered. Just silence. The next morning, I woke up numb. Not sad. Not angry. Just empty. Like I had cried out everything inside me. That was when my phone vibrated. The borrowed phone I barely used. A number I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen, almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. A calm female voice responded. Good morning. Am I speaking with? She said my name clearly. Yes, I replied cautiously. My name is Mrs. Carter. I'm calling from Horizon Investment Group. I frowned. I had never heard of them. We reviewed your resume from an old application, she continued, and your academic records. My heart began to beat faster. We would like to invite you for an interview today. I swallowed. For what position? There was a short pause. Executive assistant, trainee. My breath caught. That was far above anything I had ever applied for. I think there's been a mistake, I said softly. There hasn't, she replied. The CEO personally requested to meet you. My hands began to tremble. Why? I whispered. Another pause. Let's just say someone noticed your potential a long time ago. Potential. The same word his new girlfriend had used. But this time, it felt different. Real. We'll send a car to pick you up in 2 hours, she added. Before I could ask anything else, the call ended. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding, my mind racing. A job, a company I'd never heard of, a CEO who somehow knew my name. When I had nothing, no home, no job, no hope, something unexpected had found me. I didn't know who was behind the call. I didn't know what awaited me. I didn't know how my life was about to change. But for the first time since he left, the darkness cracked open just enough for light to slip through. The car arrived exactly on time. Black, polished, silent. The kind of car I had only ever seen in movies or passing through rich neighborhoods. It stopped in front of my friend's apartment building like it belonged there. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Miss Carter, he asked politely. I nodded. My hands were shaking as I climbed in. The leather seats were soft. The air smelled clean. Nothing in that car matched the life I had been living. As the door closed, the outside world faded, and with it, the version of me who had been crying on bathroom floors. We drove across the city, past places I had never been, past tall buildings of glass and steel, past offices where people in suits walked with purpose. I pressed my forehead lightly against the window, afraid this was a dream, afraid I would wake up back on a borrowed floor. Horizon Investment Group stood like a tower against the sky, massive, modern, reflecting the clouds like it owned them. I stepped out of the car slowly. My shoes were worn, my clothes simple, but the guard smiled warmly and held the door open. Inside, everything was quiet and polished. Marble floors, soft music, people walking confidently with tablets and files. No one looked rushed. No one looked worried about survival. This was a world built on certainty, A woman in a fitted suit approached me. "I'm Mrs. Carter," she said warmly. "Follow me." We walked through long hallways of glass offices. I could see meetings happening, screens filled with numbers, charts rising and falling, money moving, power in motion. My heart pounded. The interview room overlooked the city. Sunlight flooded the space. She handed me water. "We've reviewed your academic history," she said. "Top of your class in economics, advanced finance certifications, strategy competitions." I blinked. No one had mentioned those things in years. "I had to stop pursuing corporate work," I said quietly. "My life changed." She nodded. "But your mind didn't." She slid a tablet across the table. "Let's test something." The screen showed a failing company's financials. Losses, debts, market decline. "What would you do?" she asked. I hesitated, then began explaining. Not from memorized formulas, from instinct, from understanding. I pointed out wasted expenses, hidden assets, restructuring options, long-term investment plays. Her eyebrows slowly lifted. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, the room was silent. "That's exactly what our senior analysts recommended," she said quietly. My breath caught. "You reached it in 7 minutes." Minutes later, the door opened, and everything changed. He walked in calmly, tall, confident, not flashy, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention. It commanded it naturally. Dark suit, relaxed posture, eyes that seemed to notice everything. "This is our CEO," Mrs. Carter said respectfully. My chest tightened. The CEO of the entire company. He looked at me, not like people usually did, not with judgment, not with pity, with interest, real focus. "Good morning," he said. His voice was steady. "Good morning, sir," I replied softly. He sat across from me. "I reviewed your academic record myself," he said. "Why did you leave the corporate track?" I hesitated, then answered honestly. "Life happened. I had to survive." He nodded slowly, "And yet your mind stayed sharp." He slid another screen toward me. "A complex market projection. This acquisition is failing," he said. "Tell me why." I studied it. My pulse raced. I pointed out currency, timing issues, overvalued assets, poor expansion strategy, hidden legal risks. He leaned back slightly, watching, listening. When I finished, a small smile appeared. Not proud, impressed. "You see patterns most people miss," he said. The room felt warmer. "You're hired," Mrs. Carter said suddenly. I froze. "Hired," I whispered. "As executive assistant trainee," she confirmed. "With growth potential." My heart pounded so loud I thought they could hear it. "Thank you," I said quickly. "Thank you so much." The CEO stood. "We'll be working closely," he said calmly. "Very closely." My first week felt unreal. A desk of my own. A computer. Meetings where real decisions were made. I listened. I learned. I absorbed everything. But something unexpected happened. They started asking my opinion. At first quietly, then openly. The CEO would pause mid-meeting. "What do you think?" he'd ask me. Executives twice my age would turn to listen. My stomach would twist, but I answered. And every time, the room grew silent. Because it worked. My ideas improved profits, avoided losses, saved millions. "She's sharp," I overheard one director whisper. "Where did he find her?" "I don't know," another replied. "But the CEO watches her like an investment. He did, not in a strange way, in a thoughtful way. He'd ask about my thoughts on markets, about strategy, about risk, about growth. Sometimes after meetings, he'd call me into his office. The view from his window stretched across the city. Explain your thinking, he'd say calmly. And I would. And he would listen, really listen, like my mind mattered, like I mattered. One evening, as most employees left, I was still working. He passed my desk. "You don't have to stay late," he said gently. "I want to," I replied. He studied me for a moment. "Hard times teach discipline," he said. I looked up. "How did you know?" A faint smile appeared. "Because I recognize it." Over weeks, my position quietly shifted. I wasn't just an assistant anymore. I was becoming a strategist, a trusted voice, someone the CEO depended on. But something else was growing too. The way his eyes softened when I succeeded, the way he defended my ideas in meetings, the way he made space for me to speak, the way he remembered small things about me. Coffee without sugar. I liked quiet corners. I stayed late. And yet, there was something about his interest that felt deeper, intentional, like he had been waiting for me. One afternoon, I overheard two executives talking near the elevator. "She's not just lucky," one said. "He's been tracking her since university." "What?" the other whispered. "Her competition wins. Her market papers. He noticed her years ago." My heart skipped. Tracking me? Since university? Why? That night, as I packed up my things, I glanced toward his office. The lights were still on. His silhouette stood by the window, looking out over the city, thinking, planning, watching the world move, and somehow watching me. I didn't yet understand why the most powerful man in that building had taken such interest in a broke woman with nothing. I didn't know what he saw in me back then. I didn't know what he planned now. But I could feel it. My life wasn't changing by accident. Someone had opened a door long before I even knew it existed. And the truth behind that door would change everything. The days at Horizon Investment Group began to change me. Not overnight, not like in the movies, but gradually, through discipline, through exposure, through pressure that shaped instead of breaking me. Every morning started earlier than the last. I arrived before sunrise. The building was quiet then, just the cleaning staff and the soft hum of machines. I would sit at my desk with financial reports spread open, studying market movements, learning investment structures, understanding risk models. Sometimes the CEO would arrive early too, coffee in hand, suit perfectly pressed. He'd pause by my desk. "You're here again," he'd say calmly. "I want to be ready." I'd reply. He would nod. Approval without praise. He arranged private training sessions for me, not basic ones, advanced ones, with senior analysts, investment strategists, legal advisors, people who handled billion-dollar portfolios. At first, they questioned it. Why her? I overheard one whisper, but after the first session, their tone changed. "She's fast. She understands numbers naturally. She thinks long-term." I soaked everything in. My mind sharpened. My confidence grew. The girl who once counted coins was learning how money moved across continents. Weeks passed, then months, and suddenly I wasn't just listening anymore. I was contributing. I was predicting market turns before they happened. I was pointing out risks others missed. The CEO would lean back during meetings. Let me speak. And when I did, the room listened. My first big test came without warning. A manufacturing company Horizon planned to invest in was losing millions. Executives argued back and forth. Some wanted to pull out. Some wanted to double down. The CEO turned to me. "What's your assessment?" My heart pounded, but I spoke. I explained that the losses weren't from failure. They were from expansion costs. That the demand curve showed rapid growth in 6 months. That pulling out now would mean losing future profit. Silence filled the room. Then he nodded. "We proceed," he said. 6 months later, the company's stock tripled. Horizon made millions. My hands trembled when the reports came in. It had worked. That evening, the CEO called me into his office. The city lights glowed behind him. "You were right," he said. "I trusted you," I replied softly. He studied me. "And you delivered." There was something in his voice. Pride, respect, something deeper. My promotion came quietly. No big announcement. Just a new title on my email. Junior Strategy Associate. And a salary that made my breath catch when I saw it. I could afford an apartment, food without counting, clothes that fit well, rest without fear. For the first time in years, I felt stable. The outside changed too. My posture, my walk, my confidence. The way people looked at me shifted. Not with pity, with curiosity, with admiration. But inside the building, something else was changing. The way the CEO looked at me, the way meetings seemed to orbit around my ideas, the way he always made sure I was heard, the way he defended my decisions without hesitation. One evening, after another late strategy session, the rain poured heavily outside. I stood by the entrance, unsure how I'd get home. He appeared beside me. "I'll drive you," he said simply. The car ride was quiet. Soft music played. City lights blurred through rain-streaked windows. "You don't talk much about your past," he said calmly. "I try not to live there," I replied. He nodded. "Hard pasts create strong futures." I looked at him. "Why have you helped me so much?" His eyes stayed on the road. "Because talent should never be wasted," he said. A pause. "And because I recognize strength when I see it." My heart beat faster. The tension grew in small moments, lingering glances, long conversations after meetings. The way his voice softened when speaking to me alone. The way silence between us felt heavy, but not uncomfortable, like something waiting to happen. But he never crossed a line, never touched my hand, never spoke feelings. He remained professional, controlled, yet present, always there, always watching. Another deal came, bigger than the first, a tech expansion overseas. Risky, complex. Executives doubted it. I spent nights analyzing data, then presented a strategy that balanced risk with growth. The CEO backed me again. The deal succeeded faster than projected. Profits soared. My reputation exploded inside the company. "She's a genius," someone whispered. "She's unstoppable," said another. Another promotion followed. Strategy lead associate. More responsibility, more trust, more influence. My life was changing at a speed that felt unreal. One afternoon, while reviewing acquisition files, I saw a familiar company name. At first, I thought I imagined it. Then I looked closer. My breath caught. It was his company, the one my ex worked at, the one he had left me to grow with his wealthy girlfriend's connections. Horizon was planning to acquire it, not a partnership, a full acquisition. And the financials weren't strong. They were failing, struggling, on the edge. My hands trembled Slightly. This wasn't coincidence. This was power aligning with the past. The same man who left me because I was poor was about to fall under the company I now helped run, under decisions I would soon influence, under control I never imagined. I closed the files slowly, my heart pounding, because for the first time since that night in the dark apartment, I realized something. The future he chased was about to be decided by me, and he didn't even know it yet. The discovery didn't leave my mind, not during meetings, not during lunch breaks, not even when I tried to sleep. My ex's company name kept appearing in my thoughts like a warning, like fate clearing its throat before speaking. I told myself it was just business, that Horizon handled dozens of acquisitions every year. But something about this one felt different. Heavy, personal, unavoidable. A week later, an internal announcement went out. Mandatory board strategy meeting. Top executives only. Acquisition division attendance required. My name was on the list. My heart skipped when I saw it. I had attended meetings before, but never this level, never with the full board, never where final decisions were made. That morning, the building buzzed differently. Executives walked faster. Assistants whispered. Folders stacked high. Something big was happening. The boardroom was massive. A long glass table, leather chairs, screens on every wall. The city stretched endlessly behind the windows. I took a seat quietly, trying to steady my breathing. Moments later, the CEO walked in. The room rose to their feet. He nodded once. They sat. And just like that, the future of several companies was about to be decided. We're proceeding with a major acquisition, the CEO announced calmly. Slides appeared on the screens. Company profiles, market data, growth projections. Then the familiar logo appeared. My chest tightened. His company. Losses highlighted in red. Declining revenue. Poor management decisions. Risk alerts flashing across the charts. They were doing far worse than I imagined. On the edge of collapse. Without intervention, the CEO said, "They'll be insolvent within 18 months. Silence followed. The CEO turned slightly, which makes now the right time. Discussion began. Numbers flew across the room. Strategies debated. Some argued for partial ownership, others for full takeover. I listened quietly, absorbing everything. Then the CEO looked toward me. "Your assessment..." Every head turned. I took a breath. "They expanded too fast," I said calmly. "They relied on outside funding without securing long-term contracts. Their leadership lacks financial discipline." I paused. "But their core product is strong. With proper restructuring, it could become extremely profitable." The room was silent. Then nods appeared. He leaned back. "Exactly. We'll proceed with full acquisition," he said. My heart pounded. This was real. This was happening. Then came the words I wasn't expecting. "And I want her to lead it." The room froze. My breath caught. "She's proven her strategic ability," he continued. "She understands restructuring, growth timing, and risk management." Murmurs spread quietly. "This acquisition will be her project. Project, director, control." My chest tightened. Effective immediately, he added, "She's promoted to project director." The title echoed in my mind. Project director. I had walked into Horizon with nothing, and now I was being trusted with a multi-million-dollar takeover. "Do you accept?" he asked calmly. I swallowed. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, even though inside everything was shaking. After the meeting ended, executives congratulated me, some with real admiration, some with forced smiles. But one thing was clear. I had crossed into a new level of power. Later that day, I reviewed the full financial breakdown, the deeper files, the hidden debts, the emergency loans, the mismanagement. His company wasn't just struggling. It was drowning. If Horizon didn't step in, it would collapse. Employees would lose jobs. Investors would lose everything. And his position, the leadership role he had chased after leaving me, would disappear. He had left me for stability, and now his stability was breaking. What made it even heavier was that he had no idea who was behind the acquisition. From his side, all he would see was Horizon Investment Group, a massive corporation offering rescue. He wouldn't see my name yet. He wouldn't know the woman he once left on a cold floor was now in control of his company's future. The CEO called me into his office after hours. "You handled the board well," he said. "Thank you for trusting me." I replied. "I wouldn't give you something this big if I wasn't sure," he said. I hesitated. "This company, it's personal to me." He studied my face. "Personal how?" I took a breath. "My ex works there. He's part of the leadership team." Silence followed. He didn't react immediately, just processed. "That explains the weight in your eyes when you saw the name." He said calmly, "Yes. Can you still handle it objectively?" I nodded. "I can." He watched me carefully. "I believe you," he said, then softly added, "but I also won't let you be hurt again." My heart tightened at his words. The days that followed were intense. Legal meetings, financial negotiations, strategic planning. I became the center of the acquisition process. Every report went through me. Every decision waited for my approval. Every timeline rested on my leadership. Somewhere across the city, my ex was unaware, still believing he had escaped struggle, still thinking money was security, still unaware that his company was in danger, and completely unaware that the woman he once abandoned was about to walk back into his life, not as a lover, not as someone begging, but as the person with the power to save or destroy everything he had built. The collision was coming, slow, unavoidable, and when it happened, nothing would ever be the same. The meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Formal, high level, no delays. Executives from his company had been instructed to arrive early. The atmosphere at Horizon that day felt different. Quiet, tight, like the air before a storm. I arrived before everyone else, not because I had to, because I needed a moment. The boardroom was empty when I entered. Sunlight poured through the tall windows. The city stretched endlessly below. I placed my folder neatly on the table, took my seat, the seat at the head, the one reserved for the project director, the one that carried authority, power, control. I breathed slowly, steadying my hands. I wasn't nervous, not exactly, but something deeper than nerves moved inside me. Years of pain, sacrifice, loss, and transformation were about to meet in one room. Executives from Horizon began filing in. Some nodded at me respectfully. Some smiled. Some whispered. They took their seats. The room filled with quiet anticipation. Then the doors opened, and his company's leadership walked in. I recognized faces from old company gatherings. Men who once ignored me when I brought him lunch at work. Women who used to whisper about my cheap clothes. They looked tense, worried, because they knew the company was in trouble. This meeting was their lifeline. And then he walked in, At first, I didn't look at him. I watched the reflection in the glass wall, saw his posture, still confident, still walking like someone who believed he had finally made it. He was talking quietly to one of his colleagues, probably discussing how this acquisition would save them, probably hopeful, probably unaware. Then he lifted his eyes and saw me. The change in his face happened instantly, like the world had stopped moving. His steps slowed, his breath caught, his eyes widened. Confusion, shock, disbelief, all at once. For a moment, he looked like the man who once packed his suitcase in the dark. Except now, there was fear. He stopped walking. Completely. The room went silent. Everyone noticed. I slowly raised my eyes and met his. Years of memories rushed between us in that stare. The mattress on the floor, the eviction, the laughter outside the restaurant, the words that cut me apart. Love doesn't pay bills. You held me back. Pity, all of it, he whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear it. You. I didn't rush my answer. I held his gaze. Let the weight settle. Let the reality sink in. Yes, I said calmly. Me. The room held its breath. One of his executives leaned toward him. You know her? His voice trembled. She's my ex. Shock rippled through their side of the table. Whisper spread. The tension thickened. I opened my folder slowly. Professional. Controlled. This meeting will now begin. I said evenly. My voice didn't shake. Not once. He still hadn't moved. He looked like someone who had walked into the wrong reality. You're in charge, he asked quietly. I'm the project director overseeing Horizon's acquisition of your company. I replied. Every word landed like thunder. You've got to be kidding, he whispered. I don't joke about business. His mouth opened, closed. He searched my face for something. Anger, weakness. The girl he once left behind. But she wasn't there anymore. You work here, he finally asked. I lead here, I corrected gently. Silence. The CEO of his company cleared his throat nervously. Shall we proceed? I nodded. Let's. Charts filled the screens. Financials. Debts. Restructuring plans. Projected losses. Projected profits. I spoke calmly, clearly, confidently, explaining what Horizon would do, what changes would happen, what leadership adjustments were necessary. I saw his hands tighten on the table. I saw sweat form near his temple. You'll be stepping down from your current role. During restructuring, I said professionally. His head snapped up. What? This company needs financial discipline, I continued, and new management strategy. My words were firm, not cruel, just business. You can't be serious, he said. I'm afraid. I am. You're doing this because of us, he whispered. I met his eyes steadily. I'm doing this because your company is failing. The truth stung. He swallowed hard. I never thought I'd see you like this. I never thought you'd leave me like that. I replied calmly. The room went completely silent. Every executive frozen. Listening. I did what I had to do to survive. He said weakly, So did I? I answered. His voice dropped. You're really the one deciding everything? Yes. Whether we survive. Yes. Whether I keep my job. A pause. I decide what's best for the company. The realization finally hit him fully. The woman he left because she was broke now controlled the future he ran to chase. The power had reversed completely. His eyes softened. Regret filled them. I was wrong, he said quietly. I shouldn't have left. The words felt late, heavy, empty. I didn't respond. I simply continued the presentation. Professional, focused, unmoved. But inside, my heart was beating fast, not from fear, from closure, from strength, from the reality that I had risen higher than the pain meant to bury me. As the meeting ended, executives stood quietly. Some from his company looked relieved, some terrified. He remained seated, staring at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. When everyone else filed out, he finally spoke again. I never imagined you'd become this. I gathered my files calmly. I never imagined I'd survive what you put me through. Silence stretched. Do you hate me? He asked softly. I met his eyes. No, I said honestly. I outgrew you. And that hurt him more than anger ever could. Because in that moment, he understood something clearly. He didn't just lose a relationship. He lost the woman who became powerful without him. And this was only the beginning. After the boardroom emptied, silence filled the space like a heavy curtain. The city outside continued its endless movement. Cars flowed. People hurried. Life went on. But inside that glass room, time felt suspended. He was still seated, hands clasped tightly, head slightly lowered. The confident man who once walked away from me had disappeared. In his place sat someone uncertain, afraid, finally understanding what he had lost. I gathered my documents neatly, professional, controlled, every movement measured. I was almost at the door when his voice broke the quiet. Please. One word. Soft. Desperate. I paused. But I didn't turn around. I didn't know it would be like this. He said quietly, I never imagined you would become this. Still, I said nothing. I thought I was doing what was right. He continued. I was scared of being poor forever. His voice trembled slightly. I was under pressure. Everyone kept telling me I needed to think bigger, to move forward. I slowly turned, not emotionally, just calmly. You chose money over loyalty. I said evenly. He swallowed. I chose survival. He whispered. So did I replied. He stood slowly, walking a few steps closer, not too close, like he was afraid to cross an invisible line. I never stopped loving you, he said. The words hung in the air. For a moment, old memories tried to rise, but I pushed them back. You loved comfort more, I said. That's not true, he said quickly. I loved you. I panicked. I studied his face, the fear, the regret, the realization. You packed your things calmly. I reminded him. You didn't panic then. I made a mistake, he whispered. The biggest mistake of my life. I looked at him steadily. You didn't make a mistake, I said quietly. You made a choice. The truth landed hard. He stepped closer again. I was wrong about her, he admitted. She wasn't what I thought. I didn't respond. She only cared about status, he continued. When things started getting bad at the company, she left. I nodded slowly. Interesting, I said simply. That's when I realized how real you were. He said quickly, how loyal you were, how much you sacrificed. You realized when money left. I replied, not cruel, just factual. Tears gathered in his eyes. I would take it all back if I could. He said, I would stay. I would struggle with you. I would do things differently. I held his gaze. But you didn't. I was scared, he repeated, and I was starving. I said quietly. The room went still. He flinched. I didn't know you skipped meals. he whispered. You didn't ask, I replied. Silence wrapped around us. Do you hate me? He asked again. I don't, I answered honestly. But I don't trust you either. I want another chance, he said desperately. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. I took a slow breath, then said calmly, this conversation is not appropriate for a business setting. His shoulders dropped. You're really done with me, he whispered. I'm focused on the acquisition, I replied. But we were more than business, he said. Not to you, I said gently. He rubbed his face slowly, struggling, regret pouring from every movement. I was blind, he said. I thought success would make me happy. And now, I asked quietly, now I realize I lost the only person who loved me without conditions. I closed my folder. This meeting is over, I said calmly. I turned to leave, but he spoke again. Are you really going to ruin me? I paused, not because of fear, because of the weight of the moment. I'm going to do what's best for the company, I replied. But that could destroy everything I worked for, he said weakly. It already was destroying itself, I answered. Please, he whispered again. The word sounded smaller this time. Broken. I looked back at him one final time. You left me when I had nothing, I said softly. Now you're asking me to save you when you have everything to lose. Silence. He understood then. The power wasn't symbolic. It was real. I could approve restructuring that removed him completely. I could cut departments. I could sell assets. I could let the company collapse. Or I could rebuild it, all under my authority. And he knew it. I'm at your mercy, he whispered. I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I simply said, this is about business now. As I walked out, his voice followed quietly. I still love you. I didn't turn back. But behind the closed door, one truth echoed louder than anything else. The man who once walked away because I was broke now stood in fear because I held his future. And the choice was mine. After that meeting, nothing felt simple anymore. The numbers were still numbers. The charts were still charts. But behind every decision now stood a man who once shared my life. A man who once left when everything fell apart. Every report on my desk carried weight, not just financial, emotional, personal, permanent. At night, sleep became difficult again. Not because I was broke, not because I was afraid of tomorrow, but because memories returned. The good ones. The nights we laughed on the mattress. The dreams we shared. The plans we made. And the bad ones. The suitcase. The words. The way he looked past me. I sat on the balcony of my apartment, the one horizon now paid for, staring at the city lights. We had once dreamed of views like this, back when we couldn't even afford curtains. And now I had it, without him. Part of me wanted justice, to let the company fall, to let him feel the fear I once felt, to let him lose everything the way I had lost everything. But another part of me remembered love, the boy who once held my hand when I cried, the man who once promised never to leave, the person I thought was my forever. Revenge whispered quietly. Mercy spoke softly, and my heart stood trapped between them. The CEO noticed the change in me immediately. I was quieter in meetings, slower to speak, less certain. One evening, he asked me to stay back. His office lights glowed softly against the darkening city. You're distracted, he said gently. I hesitated, then told him everything, not just about the relationship, about the hunger, the eviction, the humiliation, the restaurant, the words, the pain. He listened without interrupting. His jaw tightened slowly. He left when you had nothing. He said calmly when I finished, "Yes." And now he wants mercy because you have everything. I nodded. He says he still loves me. The CEO held my gaze. Love doesn't disappear when money disappears, he said firmly. Real love stays when life is hardest. The words settled deep inside me. He didn't love you when you were nothing, he continued quietly. He loved comfort, security, progress. Silence filled the room. You deserve respect, he said, not regret disguised as love. I swallowed, but I don't want to become bitter. Strength isn't bitterness, he replied gently. It's choosing your worth. That night, I thought about everything. How I begged for one more week of rent. How I cried on bathroom floors. How he laughed with another woman while I struggled. How he called our love poverty with emotions. And how now he stood afraid of losing status. The next day, he requested a private meeting. I agreed. He walked in slower than before. Careful, humbled, like someone afraid of saying the wrong thing. I couldn't sleep, he said softly. Neither could I replied. I've been thinking about us. He said, about how much we went through. So have I. We were good together once, he said quickly, before money got in the way. Money revealed who you were, I answered calmly. He stepped closer. You don't have to punish me to prove you're strong. I'm not punishing you, I said evenly. I'm running a company. You're angry, he insisted. I was hurt. I corrected. Silence followed. You're letting him influence you, he said suddenly. I looked up. The CEO. He wants you to destroy me so he can keep you to himself. The accusation hung heavy. He warned you about me, he continued quickly, because he wants you. I studied him, and you didn't want me when I was broke. He flinched. That's not fair. It's true. He doesn't know our history like I do, he said. He doesn't know how much I loved you. He knows how you left. I replied. I'm not perfect, he said desperately, but I'm the man who shared 4 years with you, and I'm the woman you walked away from. You're really going to choose him over me? He whispered. There is no choosing, I said firmly. This is about self-respect. Tears filled his eyes again. I can change, he said. I've already changed. You changed when money left, I answered quietly. You're enjoying this, he accused softly. Watching me suffer. I shook my head. I'm healing. Silence wrapped around us. I loved you, he said again. And I loved you enough to starve for you, I replied. The words landed hard. He broke. I was wrong, he whispered. I was weak. Yes, I said gently. And weakness has consequences. When he left, my heart felt heavy, but clearer. Later that evening, the CEO texted me. Just 2 lines. Whatever you decide, make sure it protects your future, not your past. I stared at the message and finally understood. This wasn't about revenge. It was about who I had become. But the final decision still lay ahead. Save the company and remove him from power, or let it collapse and walk away. Forgive, or close the chapter forever. And whichever choice I made would change all our lives. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, in fragments, like cracks spreading across glass. It started with an email, no subject, just a forwarded thread from someone inside her ex's company. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw his name, over and over and over again. The messages were dated, months before he packed his suitcase. Months before he said he was tired of struggling. Months before he claimed money ruined our love. He had already been meeting her, the wealthy woman, private lunches, late-night calls, hotel bookings, conversations about investments, about lifestyle, about how life would be easier together. One line froze my breath. She's sweet, but she doesn't fit the life I'm building. The message was written by him, about me. My hands shook, not because I was surprised, because part of me had always felt it, but seeing it made it real. He didn't leave because life was hard. He left because someone richer appeared. Another file was attached. Screenshots, photos, smiles, vacations he claimed were business trips, moments when I was skipping meals to send him transport money, moments when he was sipping wine with another woman. The heartbreak was sharper than before, but cleaner, like a wound finally exposed to air. I closed my laptop and stared into nothing. All those nights I blamed myself. All those questions about what I did wrong. All that shame. And it had never been about me. Later that day, something else surfaced. The CEO pulled me aside after a meeting. "There's something you should know about the acquisition," she said carefully. I followed her into a private room. She placed financial reports in front of me. "The company's problems didn't start recently," she explained. "They started with reckless spending." My stomach tightened. "Luxury cars," she continued. "Unnecessary offices. High-risk loans." The signature appeared again. His. He had been trying to live rich before he ever was. Trying to impress investors. Trying to impress her. Trying to look successful while drowning the company in debt. He used company funds for personal expenses. The CEO added quietly. Hotels, trips, gifts, everything he once claimed he couldn't afford. The collapse wasn't bad luck. It was his choices. And then came the final truth, the one that changed everything. A former assistant from his firm reached out anonymously. She asked to meet. We sat in a small cafe far from the business district. Her hands trembled around her cup. "I didn't know who to tell," she said, "but you deserve to know." She took a breath. "The wealthy girlfriend isn't wealthy," she whispered. I frowned. "She's been moving from businessman to businessman for years." My heart sank. "She attaches herself to rising men," the assistant continued. "Builds connections. Lives off them. Then leaves when money dries up. She encouraged his risky investments," she added, "pushed him to spend big, take loans, show status." "Why?" I asked. "Because it made him look powerful, which made her look powerful. The woman he left me for was using him." "She's already gone," the assistant finished softly. "She left 2 months ago when the company started sinking." Silence wrapped around the table. He had lost me, lost his money, lost his company, and lost the woman he thought was his upgrade. Everything he traded our love for was never real. That night, he called again. His voice sounded tired, fragile, different. "I miss you," he said quietly. I closed my eyes. "Do you miss me?" I asked slowly. "Or do you miss the life you lost?" He didn't answer. "You were seeing her before you left me," I said calmly. The silence told the truth. "You said I held you back," I continued softly. "But you were already reaching for someone else. I didn't plan for it to happen." He whispered. "But it did," I replied. "You used company money to impress her," I said. Another silence. "She left you when the money faded," I added. His breath hitched. "So don't talk to me about love," I said gently. Talk to me about choices. I ruined everything, he finally cried. Yes, I said quietly. For the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel crushed. I felt free. The pain was still there, but it no longer confused me, no longer made me doubt my worth, no longer begged for answers. He didn't leave because I wasn't enough. He left because he chased more and lost everything. And somehow that truth hurt less than the lies, because clarity is lighter than hope built on illusion. Now I understood something important. Saving his company wouldn't save him, and destroying it wouldn't heal me. The decision ahead was no longer emotional. It was about growth, consequences, and closing the chapter with strength. But what I didn't know yet was that my final choice would shock everyone, including him, including the CEO, and even myself. The boardroom was fuller than usual that morning. Executives, lawyers, investors, analysts, faces serious, numbers glowing on the massive screen. Everyone knew the future of the company would be decided in this room, but only a few knew the personal storm behind it. I sat at the head of the table, calm on the outside, a lifetime of emotion inside. Across from me, he sat stiffly, hands folded, eyes tired, no confidence left in his posture, just fear, hope, regret. The CEO stood and began the presentation. Charts showed debt, losses, risk, then projections, recovery, growth. If handled correctly, our acquisition can save this company, he said firmly, but only with structural change. Eyes turned toward me. This decision rests with our project director. Silence filled the room. Every heartbeat sounded loud in my ears. This was it, the moment everything balanced on. Love, pain, power, growth, closure. I stood slowly, walked toward the screen, and began. 3 years ago, I said calmly, this company was rising. Heads nodded. Today it's drowning. No one argued. The collapse wasn't sudden, I continued. It was built by reckless spending, personal withdrawals, and risky loans. The CEO confirmed with numbers. Gasps whispered around the table. Yet, I said steadily, it is still worth saving. More silence. Our firm will absorb the debt, restructure operations, and stabilize cash flow, I announced. Relief moved across the room. Investors leaned forward. Hope returned. But I added softly, leadership will change immediately. The word landed heavy. I turned toward him, met his eyes. They already knew. Effective today. I said, clearly, the current director is removed from his position. Shock rippled through the room. Some covered mouths. Others whispered, he will retain partial ownership shares. I continued, enough to rebuild his life, but not enough to control this company again. Legal advisors nodded. The structure was fair, firm, final. He stood suddenly. Please, he whispered. But I raised my hand gently. This is not revenge, I said calmly to the room. This is accountability. I turned to face him fully now. The room faded. It was just us. You left me when I was struggling. I said quietly. You chose comfort over commitment. Tears filled his eyes. You said love doesn't pay bills. I continued. But loyalty builds futures. You lost me when you chose money over love. The words cut deeper than anger ever could. I'm saving your company, I said softly, but I'm not saving you from consequences. His shoulders collapsed, not in anger, in understanding. I deserve this, he whispered. I didn't answer, because the truth no longer needed explanation. The CEO stepped forward. "The motion passes," he said firmly. Gavel struck. Just like that. The chapter closed. Security quietly escorted him out. Not roughly, not cruelly, just respectfully. A man leaving power behind. As the doors shut, something lifted inside me. Not triumph. Peace. The company was saved. Jobs protected. Futures restored. And my past finally placed where it belonged. Behind me, after the meeting, I stood by the window overlooking the city, hands shaking slightly now that it was over. The CEO joined me. "You were strong," he said softly. "I was fair," I replied. He smiled gently. "That's stronger." I breathed deeply. For the first time in years, I felt light, but what I didn't know yet was that healing would open the door to something even bigger than success. Something real, something steady, something that didn't disappear when life got hard. And that love was about to find me again. Power didn't change how the city looked, but it changed how I walked through it. Straighter, calmer, certain. The storm that once lived in my chest had finally settled. In the days after the boardroom decision, everything moved quickly. The acquisition stabilized the company. Markets responded positively. Staff relaxed. The crisis passed. And for the first time since I walked into Horizon Investments as a broken woman, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was thriving. Yet something else had been growing quietly in the background. Something not written in reports. Something not tracked by numbers. Something in the way the CEO looked at me. Not like a boss. Not like a rescuer. But like a man watching a woman he respected deeply. We worked late, one evening reviewing projections. The office was nearly empty. City lights glowed beyond the glass walls. The same view I once dreamed about when I had nothing. "You've changed everything," he said softly. "I had help," I replied. "You had strength long before I met you," he said. I paused. "What do you mean?" He leaned back in his chair. "I noticed you the first week," he admitted. "Not because you were new. Because you asked better questions than managers who'd been here 10 years. I smiled faintly. "You were hurting," he continued, "but you never played weak. I saw how you stayed late, how you studied reports, how you absorbed everything." I swallowed. "You weren't just rebuilding your life," he said. "You were becoming powerful." Silence filled the room. The good kind. The kind that holds emotion instead of awkwardness. "There's something I've wanted to tell you since the boardroom," he said quietly. My heart beat faster. "I admire you," he said simply, "not for what you achieved, for how you rose." I met his eyes, and somewhere along the way, he continued softly. Admiration turned into something deeper. My breath caught. I didn't want to cross boundaries. He said, "You were healing," and I respected that. "But now," I whispered, "now I want to be honest. I've fallen for you." The words landed gently, not like my past love, rushed and desperate. This felt steady, earned, safe. "I don't need you to say anything right now," he added. "I just wanted you to know." But I already knew my answer. Because love didn't scare me anymore. Settling did. "I care about you too," I said softly. His eyes warmed. But this time, I continued. "I choose slowly. I choose respect. I choose partnership." He smiled. "That's exactly what I want." He stood, held out his hand. "Not just in love," he said gently, "but in life, in business, in building something real. A partnership," I teased softly. "A powerful one," he replied. I placed my hand in his. And for the first time, love felt like strength, not sacrifice. Weeks later, the company officially announced me as senior partner. News headlines celebrated the turnaround, the once broke woman now leading a corporate empire. But the biggest victory wasn't money, it was peace. One evening, as I left the building with the CEO beside me, laughter floating between us, I saw him, my ex, standing across the street, watching, not angry, not bitter, just silent, seeing the life he walked away from. Our eyes met. I didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't look back again, because the chapter was closed. Behind me stood pain, struggle, hunger, and betrayal. Ahead of me stood love, power, growth, and respect. I once begged a man to stay. Now a man stood beside me, choosing me every day. He left when I was broke. Now I controlled the future. But more importantly, I controlled my worth. And love finally met me where I stood, strong, whole, unbreakable. Sometimes losing someone is the beginning of finding yourself. And sometimes the person who leaves you in your darkest season was never meant to walk with you into your brightest one.